Amanda Harcourt, Carnegie Mellon University, Migno Wen, Yoko Ono and the Geffen Corporation purported to have developed a psychological profile of me, which they classified as the menace to Lenin's beatitude. And for this representation of the long stalling operation of refusal to acknowledge what was really done on Mount Desert Island and what is really in the Burston letters, in part because they allude to the semiotic industry in cinema, which they want at all costs to avoid analysis concerning. UW Dialectical brought in heavy-handed queer estate crowds to play queer from Umpqua for Toon's legendary claim that Reagan and Lenin were the sacred and holy victims of the plan by the subconscious Manchurian candidate. That was Patricia Fripp's contribution to the crystal ball. And you're supposed to swallow it out with backwater of Brian Eno's skullduggery and moonshine. There are some psychological profile factoids of interest, I suppose. One is that Gregory Carl talked about persona impinging on the persona's experience. In other words, if pacifism is immoral, then you must blurt anything you say in retaliation to endless streams of doggerel. What Martha Gellhorn said was evil idiocy best forgotten and ignored. So they would have racists infuriating me, and I would bite my tongue because I didn't want to be bothered with counteracting this Nazism. And they ignored that legendary psychiatrist Petronilla Val Smith told me to say the first thing that comes to my mind, full knowing that they had frozen a neurolinguistic implant, which they called Burston from The Exorcist, an impactive interpretive disorder. And they knew that they had done that when they were giving, and they knew I didn't know they had done that, and that I was fighting not just the spiritual negativity that Norman Finkelstein rationalizes with the ethics of Zizek. And keep in mind, these are postdoctoral people who went to schools and consorted for decades with intelligent minds. And I was shut down, forced to wash dishes for a living, and never allowed to go to school, and deaf. But they ignore all of that because Peter Gabriel is fair and Robert Fripp is wise. So I'll tell you a little bit about the psychological truth, because I had to be depicted as the menace because the Black Panthers want to inject a white for Yoko Ono's under the flopping five with the bribes under the table. And they dig seeing me argue for my life, man, while they rip and murder bystanders and stuff. They had to depict me as the anti-queer. I wrote a sarcastic poem about Buchanan called The Faggot Hater. And that was too bold. Oh, no, woke says no. So I erased it. No, woke says no. What happened? Oh my God, what happened? In 1984, I was working in a medical library and I saw the cadavers of queers in San Francisco who were before the time of testing in medicine. And I said, Jesus Christ. And I go out to this has to, we have to have some kind of warning system to prevent this from affecting people. We have to rescue this culture. We have to um, not humanize the plague, but make a mission of putting people into a mode where they care about each other but don't put themselves at risk. None of this suicide stuff. And I'd come out to the lunchroom and Reagan would be going in the newspapers, a moral plague, and Pat Buchanan would be saying these terribly, unrepeatably obnoxious things. I mean, things that are so sadistic and unrepeatably obnoxious. Woke never jumped up and down about them because Ringo Starr says that's holy freedom of speech. And we're going to use the Rushdie meter, barometer of Salman Rushdie, to conjure holy freedom of speech. And what I did was I felt so hard for the gay community, which I was never a part of and had been victimized by in Pittsburgh. I felt so badly for them that I tried to investigate. And I really, really, really admired them for a long time. I felt that they had shown solidarity and magnanimity about it. You could not dissuade me from singing their praises until Clinton came along in the 90s. Obama came along with Jeff and sabotaged me in my bedroom. And the queers jumped on me, helping Zell and Gail Burston in the name of Ono, in the name of Lenin, and started Ripper murdered bystanders after luring me to what they claimed would be a safe zone in Seattle, a typical Israeli Nazi trick, so that they could poison me in the mouth and the stomach, torture me, give me Parkinson's. And that was the queers unmasking. The mask was off with the queers. Sean Straub and Michael Foucault turned out to be suicide bombers of the entire attack. So is Diamond DeGaulis, if you want to know why I'm sometimes suspicious of Pussy Riot. Pushing the envelope and making Decadent an ultimatum, which they still do in Seattle with newbies. And the mask was off when the queers started saying we're building momentum. For what? For the invasion of Gaza, Nosferatu momentum. So there's some psychiatric history that doesn't need to be probed. You don't need to go through the fact that I used to listen to Hair and sing their songs, and that got confused out of context. Psychological history is very clear. I admired and praised the gay community, not out of any kind of sarcasm or sanctimonious, like Richard McGarvey talking about sending them sympathetic vibrations. And that's who they sided with when they tortured me. Or Doris Lessing stuff about soothing noises. None of this is meant to contradict any of the things I said in my recent tape. I believe that I met fundamentalists who were appalled by the whole thing. One of the most charitable, understandable, level-headed people I met was on a train from the Billy Graham Foundation. She heard the whole story about the crypto KCism of Gurdjieff mysticism favoring the Ku Klux Klanmen because the black man had been insulted by the international freedom of the Indian woman, and therefore Obama gets to claim Midori, and I should forgive the people who tortured me. She heard the whole wangle that came out of Amanda Harcourt and Ming-Na Wen, the honorary, the African warrioresses, the Amazons of Africa, Chinese warriors of sacred Africa ancestors. Amanda Harcourt and Ming-Na Wen. She heard the whole wangle. And she said, if you forgave these people, would they at least leave you alone?